It's my great pleasure to introduce Lila Lieberman. Lila's been working with medicinal plants and indigenous methodologies of healing for 25 years. She began her journey in the Atacama Desert of Peru and later initiated as a Sangoma, a traditional healer and seer in the Shona tradition of South Africa, where she was born. Her focus is on the living library held within the plant and human kingdoms, and how their collaboration activates profound capacities for new perception and creative psychological feedback. She explores the various cultural ways, rites and ceremonies that open these channels of learning. And Lila's academic background includes anthropology, linguistics, philosophy, and transpersonal psychology. And she holds a diploma in integral coaching. Please welcome Lila.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So the title of my talk today is Preparing the Vessel. Let me start first with gratitude to the land that we're on and to all the ancient hundreds of thousands of feet and heart and hands that have blessed this land, that allows us to cultivate a certain nectar so that we can meet here today in this way. And greeting all of the ancestors that brought each one of us forward, all the streams, the lineages that have us here today to meet in this beautiful way. So I remember my Zulu teacher in South Africa. She always was referring to the vessel of my being. How is the vessel doing? How is the vessel of your being? We need to sharpen, we need to cleanse your vessel. And for a long time, I didn't understand what she meant by that. And as I started working with her and we did all this crafting and cleansing and washing in the ocean and steaming with herbs, I started to understand that what we were doing is actually cleansing the inside of the container of my being. And all this crafting, this hollowing, I really started to understand what was meant by hollow bone medicine, cleansing out the inside of the being so that we can be a container and be empowered enough to choose what nectar we wish to contain. So as we do this and as we do this beautiful work and as we step on this path with the plants, we really are cultivating the nectar of our being, because the quality of our attention determines what unfurls next. So many wisdom cultures, all wisdom cultures have known that there are particular nodes along a human lifespan, like a sacred geometry, times that are good to prune and times that are good to cultivate a certain propagation of energy. Just like any other plant or any other organism, we have a certain sacred timing that works in alignment with the universe. And if we plant a rite of passage and an initiation, a ceremony at that time, we really can cultivate. It's like pruning the plant of our being just at the right time. We really can cultivate these beautiful growth spurts and move our attention to higher and higher states of consciousness. So we find these opportune stages, and then we implant these practices and techniques to nourish the upcoming stage. So this allows us really to move into the mythic realm of our being. And while it seems mysterious, it's only from this side of the looking glass that it seems mysterious. So essentially, to initiate, to cultivate and activate and refine the quality of our attention is our innate capacity as human beings. Culture is a living thing, and we really understand what this means when we talk about it in the gut and in the soil and on the skin. When we talk about a culture biologically, we mean a ferment, and the role of a ferment is to move something from one state of being to another. It transmutes a state of being. So its entire function is transmutation, is alchemy. Now, when we talk about it on the level of human being, on the level of tribalism and having a culture, the Latin root of the word culture is cultura. It means to cultivate. It means to enhance or to build something, to really change the state of something, to move it from one state to an enhanced state of being, to heighten our capacities. So because it's alive, culture is this receptacle for wisdom, and it enhances the levels of our consciousness. And this is the purpose of initiation. It's to elevate our capacities. which is versus tradition, really. If we don't have culture, this living, intelligent, responsive capacity, we really are just repeating things. We're just doing things because they've been done before. So that's the difference between having tradition and having culture. Culture is living and responsive and adaptive to what's appropriate and happening in the environment now. So not to have a culture, really, is to be like an orphan in a way. It's... You know, when we think of the cultures in the soil and in the skin and in the gut, that is our medicine, that is our immune system. So when we have culture on the surface of the planet in the forms of human beings living in tribes and practicing a culture, this is the immune system of the planet. And doing without this, we really are compromising the immune system of the planet. So what we find ourselves, where we find ourselves now as a human species, is feeling almost in the dark for living, intelligent, responsive ways of being to reignite a sense of culture so that we can up the immune system of the planet that's really struggling now. The immune system is where intelligence is held. I would even say the mind is like the immune system of our being. So as we propagate the soil and bring back the living cultures, we're propagating our own heightened state of consciousness. We're propagating our own interdimensional intelligences. So the purpose of initiation really is like a pattern interrupt. Like I said before, it's a pruning of the plant of our being, and it interrupts previous ways of functioning. It interrupts this inertia. It keeps us alive and it keeps us awake. And it's like perturbation medicine. Initiation really is challenge medicine, because when we challenge something, we stimulate an immune response. So we can really imagine, especially when it's done with intention and intelligence, that done in the right amount, it really gives rise to an adaptive response. So we can really imagine that on the planet as a whole right now, we're undergoing a massive global initiation. There's huge challenge, and it's forcing us to adapt in really intelligent and interesting ways. So, you know, culture can be, initiation can be such a challenging event that it's almost disorientating. It's like being a caterpillar inside the cocoon. And this moment of not knowing, of being lost on the map, is a really important portal to allow ourselves to dissolve and then resolve into heightened states of consciousness. So initiation really is a moving from one state of being to another. And it ignites the more multidimensional aspects of ourself and of our body. And yet, at the same time, we cannot be initiated. We cannot initiate ourselves, and we can't be initiated by another. We can only lay the foundation. We can only prepare the soil of our being. Because once again, we're very similar to plants. And while with a plant, we can tend the soil, we can put the seed in, we can give it all the nutrition it needs, the right amount of water, the right amount of sun, it will send down a root and send up a shoot, and then we can let it grow, and we can prune the leaves. We can do everything. We can water it, care for it, but we cannot make it flower. Now, the word for initiation in South Africa is twasa, which translates into a blossoming. It's the natural blossoming of our being. It's the natural innate capacity of our being to blossom into a heightened state of consciousness. We can't do this. It's not an action. We can only prepare the soil of our being. We can only tend the ground so that that natural innate capacity to blossom comes forward. And blossoming then, it happens in the mythic realm. So what we do is we prepare the soil of our being so that the structure can blossom into seeing, so that the container can really alchemize its contents. And that's where the role of temples come in. The function of temples really, in my view, is to be a mirror of our own highest capacities. The same cosmological intelligence that built these beautiful, incredible buildings with this immaculate sacred geometry and infrastructure came through us. We are the necessary vessel that's needed to channel this immaculate, beautiful intelligence. So because of this, it really talks to us about it is a mirror of what we are. It's a mirror of our own capacities. It's this beautiful, exquisite, immaculate edifices are our artworks. So that should tell us something about ourselves. Essentially, I see temples as temples of the self. We often find, as we just saw in the previous slide and in this slide, we find tiers built into the temples, and what they're representing is different levels of consciousness. And they hold a central axis, the sacred axis between all the levels of consciousness. And it's reminding us and reflecting to us that we have access to that axis, that we have access to heightening and refining our levels of consciousness. So the physiology of temples is reflecting this for us. everything we do in the temple, everything that we prepare, the ceremonies, the rites of passage, the offerings, laying that space really is not about the temple itself, but it's about the fact that it's a vessel to contain and reflect the energy being cultivated within ourselves. The temple is a mirror of our own capacities, and all that we do there to practice and keep it perfect, in perfect alignment and perfect timing, really is to be a mirror to our own capacities. So from the most beautiful, intricate temples to the most rudimentary, and this stone here is the Grail Stone, just outside of Cape Town on the equinox, we can see that all these buildings, whether they're fancy or whether they're super simple, they talk about alignment of the being, and they talk about awareness, and they talk about our orientation in our cosmic home. So these structures really tell us something about ourselves. They're designed on simple principles. They talk about direction, alignment to the solstices and the equinoxes, to the fixed stars. They talk about simple orientation in time and space. And they all serve to remind us of the simple yet profound geometry of our being. Now, every cell in our being is built on sacred geometry. We'll start off as a sphere, and that gets fertilized and then divides into this vesica Pisces. And then that divides again and starts to form a tetrahedron. And that continues to divide this beautiful sacred geometry of our being along the Fibonacci sequence. We really are a walking, talking temple in ourselves. We're designed on sacred geometry. So just like the temples show us, there are opportune times of the year and in our lives to activate certain qualities within and to capture the light, as it were. So these enliven our innermost caverns. And if we align our practices in accordance with this natural timing and the timing of the cosmos around us, these rites of passages, these ceremonies, these initiations, then we can set our own activation like a clock and be in alignment with the greater geometry of all the motions around us. So to access this cosmic momentum is to support these optimal states within us. There's already a momentum moving through the universe. There's already a beautiful sacred timing. All we've got to do is get on that wave and ride it. It's already moving. We don't have to recreate the wheel. So speaking about temples, I'm going to look at some temples and show how they really are a mirror of ourselves, and quite literally. So there was a French Egyptologist and mystic, R.A. Schwaller de Lubix, and he wrote The Temple of Man. And he lived in Luxor Temple for over a decade, and he did this impeccable study. He measured every single pillar, he measured the geometry of everything there, and discovered that the key to the temple really was that it's a massive representation of the human body. So in India, temples were originally built just for Shiva. As time went on, they've started doing it for other gods, but originally temples were for Shiva. And the word Shiva literally means that which is not. It means that which is beyond the physical manifestation. So the temples are actually built for that which is not, for the unseen aspects of ourselves. And they're built to mirror these. So the temple, really going into a temple and practicing within a temple is like a portal into the unmanifest and unseen aspects of ourselves. You can see here how the Hindu temples are literally built on the design of human body. Same is true of Solomon's temple, ancient Canaan, Babylon area. It's modeled on the design of a man. Same is true of other Hindu temples. Same is true of stupas. The sacred geometry is completely mirrored on human geometry. And in a more rudimentary but no less powerful way, the Iboga temples used in the Bhuti initiations are modeled on, they're a parallel of the chakra system, of the human chakra system. And actually through that ritual of initiation, the Banzi, the initiate, is moved from the base chakra all along the chakras in perfect timing with where they are at in their ceremony. And at the end of their initiation, they're left in the crown. They're left to come back to center and undergo their rebirth. They're rebirthing back into this realm in the crown chakra. So this mirrors the procession in our states of being. So again, essentially, the temples are a mirror of our inner structure and our inner evolution through different phases and states of consciousness. And this makes temples very personal to us. They reflect our geometry and our capacities and our immediate relationships to the cosmic surroundings, the solar, the stellar, the lunar capacities. They are this beautiful, exquisite artifact that we've built to mirror ourselves back to ourselves. Padmasambhava, otherwise known as Guru Rinpoche, said, "The ground for realizing enlightenment is a human body." And this really just serves to show all that I've shown before about the sacred geometry of our cells and the beauty of the mirroring of the temples, serves to show that we are a sacred site in and of ourselves. So toning the vessel of our being allows a certain frequency to inhabit it. And the body is this vessel that allows this refinement. So the highest purpose of a body and of a temple is this transformation of consciousness. This is why we have these vessels. This is why we build these vessels. And I really feel that our healing itself lies in this self-remembering. There's a great deal of well-meaning people that are very self-critical about what it is to be human, and there's a great amount of self-loathing on the planet with this implication that the planet would be better off without humans. And I disagree. I disagree strongly. I think that humans are a very important aspect of the planet. And I feel that this remembering our own beauty is really a key to our healing, much more than the self-criticism. Because to be criticized and neglected by ourselves in this way is very traumatizing. Now, traumatized beings act out in a certain way. If we're already acting out in a certain way, this continual self-criticism and self-loathing is adding fuel to the fire. So while it's well-meaning and it's good to self-reflect and see that we're not on a great track, I don't think this way of reflecting on ourselves as humans is useful in healing. So beings really heal in the presence of compassion. So remembering our beauty, our cosmic anatomy, our incredible potentiality are really a vital part of our healing. So talking of compassion, let's turn to other kingdoms around us that have our back, other kingdoms that really are our allies. They're profound allies, all the natural kingdoms around us. And when we engage them respectfully, they help us to realign ourselves, with our own sacred geometry and with the natural rhythms that we exist within. Plants, for one, are a way that civilizations store memory. Not only do we receive medicine when we take a plant, and we receive this beautiful transmission from the plants, but we can implant them with it as well. We can imprint the plant medicine. So as we take plants and we have these experiences, we are cultivating and adding to that akashic memory of how that medicine is used. So people further downstream will receive the nectar of this cultivated momentum. So we can implant and infuse a plant with knowledge and allow it to carry that knowledge down the ages. And this then propagates itself. That's the beauty and the wisdom. It propagates itself and it travels in parallel with the human kingdom. And it's carried forward in time. So it's a real beautiful vehicle through which timeless wisdom travels. And when we look at the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom, it's the most profound love affair. The greens and the reds, the iron and the chlorophyll, the iron and the magnesium, the blood and the chlorophyll. This beautiful interaction. We breathe what they breathe out. We exhale and they breathe that in. They take the carbon dioxide in our breath and they make it into the structure and their form. And we eat that then in the form of carbohydrates, carbon and hydrogen. And then we let that link with the carbon go. We exhale it, they breathe it in. So it's actually the most intricate tantra. If anything is the best definition of tantra, it's the relationship between the plant and the animal kingdoms. So I'm going to speak very briefly about other ways that we store our memory. Now, in the body of knowledge that's been coming through since I completed my initiation in South Africa, it's called the 5 Pillars of Medicine. Some of you may be familiar with it. One of the teachings that comes through is called the Fabric of Spirit. And inside the Fabric of Spirit, there is a teaching that tells me about the streams of reality. All the teachings come in 5, and I was told that there's only 5 streams of reality. There is time, space, level, dimension, and plane. And each of these hold one of the streams, one of the channels of our being. And I won't go into it now exactly what sits where, just for interest of time, but ancestry and lineage will sit in one of them, past lives will sit in another, interdimensional aspects will sit in another, the refined levels of our consciousness sit in another, the quantum sits in another. Now we have access to these streams of reality, and knowledge is power. We all understand this. But what is power? Power is simply energy. And we know that energy can't be created or destroyed. So the same way, knowledge can't be created or destroyed. When one of our streams of reality is disrupted, say like our ancestry, there's been massive upheaval, people have had to be in exile, to be on the run, we can't store our knowledge, our ancestral wisdom in the stream of ancestry because it's been interfered with, it's been interrupted. So we'll move that knowledge into another stream for ourselves to pick up again later down the line when things are more appropriate. Knowledge can't be created or destroyed because it's energy. So we might put knowledge in the plant kingdom, or we might put knowledge in... They all parallel, so I won't go into the teachings now, but I hope to have more time to discuss the streams of reality more. We'll store our knowledge in one of these other streams of reality that travel through past lives or interdimensional intelligence or heightened states of consciousness if our ancestry can't hold that for us. So it's a beautiful, amazing adaptability, an ingenious way that we can adapt and store pockets of information for ourselves to tap once again when it's more opportune time. And memory is holographic, so when we start to tap it through any of these streams, it starts to reflect and open and remind us in all of the streams. Ley lines, song lines, meridians, whatever you want to call them, they travel across all of these 5 streams of reality, not just space. And this is how people can time travel, they can move interdimensionally, the nodes of the ley line. When we have some kind of ceremony or know-how on how to fold those, there's a node that allows a interdimensional connection, interdimensional portal. So these ley lines run through time and space and levels of the being and dimensions and planes of existence. Like I say, in the future, hopefully I'll have more time to describe this. So the Akash, obviously, the ether, the space element, is the element that holds, it's that element outside of all elements. It's the element that holds all the memory, and it is included in one of those streams. The Akashic records, we'll know what that is the library with a vibrational signature of everything that's ever occurred across all time and space, across the entire universe, through all 5 streams of reality. Anything that's ever happened, the vibrational signature exists in the Akash. So wisdom cultures that intentionally use this knowledge would store information there because they could see through time and knew that difficult times were coming. Ancient Egyptians, Atlanteans, for example, they knew that troubled times were coming and that the mystery schools would fall into the wrong hands. So they took the knowledge and they embedded it in different levels of consciousness for the initiates to then tap once again like a nectar drop, like a dew drop in the plasma of consciousness when we're ready. So, you know, they say the Atlanteans and ancient Egyptians, before things fell into disarray, they left some of their DNA here. While some of them may have gone back to where they came from, they left some of their physical DNA here so that at the time that we were ready to receive and remember the knowledge, the time of awakening, which I believe we are on the cusp of now, they could reappear and recognize what these wisdom practices and tools are. Same with Padmasambhava, once again, Guru Rinpoche, the amazing enlightened being that existed a few thousand years ago in Tibet. He knew he could see through time, fully awakened being. He could see through time and knew hard times were coming and that much of the knowledge would be destroyed. So what he did was he created termas. Termas translates to hidden teachings or hidden gems, and he seeded these in the plasma of consciousness. And then he implanted these in the mind stream of his 25 main disciples, who then, of course, continue to reincarnate and unlock these teachings with certain practices that were cultivated in their culture. So these thought waves or wisdoms, they exist outside of time and space. And simply in the realm of pure vibration. They're called jinlap, which translates into blessing waves or gift waves. So anyone who has enhanced their faculties can activate and resonate with this timeless scripture or thought form. So if we're holding a certain frequency, we've cultivated our being to a certain frequency, we will resonate with the frequency of that teaching and come into contact with it and download it. This is the purpose of initiation. So the more we enhance our faculty to hold this, the more wisdom that we can tap and receive and interpret. So that's why we prepare the vessel of our being, we tone it to begin to receive and remember this timeless wisdom. Termas, this kind of wisdom, this kind of knowledge that's held in other states of consciousness is not like Western education through a linear accumulation of knowledge. It's really just about preparing the vessel of our being, and when the ground is prepared adequately, then realization happens instantaneously. And this is the purpose of the wisdom practices. They operate outside of time and space, and the reason I'm sharing this is because so can we. We can loosen the paradigm to which we're so beholden and start to validate the knowledge that comes through dreams or through intuition or through plant communication, plant wisdom. All the knowledge is already here. It's just held in a particular frequency. So then we can come to understand ourselves as antenna. And as antenna, we clean ourselves from the inside, hollow bone medicine. Then we're empowered to tune into the station that we want to. So quite physiologically, quite biologically, this makes sense. As above, so below. The field of epigenetics talks about the old school way of thinking was that all the ingredients and building blocks were held in the DNA. They were going to unfold in the way they were going to unfold without question. That's just your DNA. But epigenetics is finding that's not actually quite how it works. There are these tiny, fine hairs called cilia that exist on the outside of a cell, and they're reading the environment all the time, feeding that information into the nucleus to allow the nucleus to respond intelligently and tell the DNA what is the appropriate response to that moment. So the traditional idea of DNA is being thrown more and more out of the water in terms of how it works. Now, always we can see the same principles at work, as above, so below. If we look at the earth as a cell, what do you imagine the tiny hair-like structures on the outside of the cell would be? The cilia. I would say those are humans. The intelligent, organic beings that are reading the environment and feeding it back to the earth. Originally, we'd be doing this with ceremony. We'd know that this is our role. We'd be reading the cosmic information, giving it to the earth, taking ceremony, doing it, communicating to the cosmos. That was the role of a culture, to be this middleman, this medium, this medio, this medicine in between realms. So cilia really are like humans, and that both cilia and humans are like antenna. Nikola Tesla says, "My brain is only a receiver. In the universe, there's a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration. I haven't penetrated the secrets of this core, but I know that it exists." So cleaning out our being and allowing ourselves to become this vessel of transparency and really clean, hollow bone medicine, we can start to acknowledge that the brain doesn't generate or create consciousness, but it receives it, it downloads it. So the consciousness is emanating through the body, not from the body. And we can heighten the refinement that we're able to bring through by toning the vessel of our being. That's just to show us biologically what it looks like. As above, so below. So living on the surface of the planet, these beautiful cilia, these beautiful antennae, this heightened intelligent being that we have the capacity to be, we are frequency generators and carriers. And when enough of us start generating and cultivating the same frequency, it moves into a tipping point, much like a finger on the rim of a glass or getting a Tibetan bowl to swim. To hum and to vibrate, we move into a tipping point of consciousness where we cultivate our own consciousness. We're of the highest benefit to all beings because we're adding to this momentum of this hum, this tone that we're starting to generate on the planet. So I'm going to read something briefly to speak about cyanobacteria and talk about the last time that the planet was under as much severe stress as it is now was, researchers say, about 400 million years ago. And that's a time when the Earth took an enormous leap in the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere. Before then, there was so little oxygen in Earth's atmosphere it could barely be measured. So no animal or plant life as we know it could exist. Much of the life on Earth consisted of tiny microbes, and among them a blue-green algae called cyanobacteria, which breathed in carbon dioxide and exhaled oxygen in the earliest forms of photosynthesis. So the Earth's supply of oxygen began to develop thanks to the planet's gradually slowing orbit. Longer days started to come about, and this allowed the algae, what was seen as a problem, which was seen as a massive overgrowth, actually forced a whole lot more oxygen to come into the air, which allowed plant and animal kingdoms to come into existence. So this particular stress caused the whole of the plant and animal kingdoms to have a space into which they could exist. The concept of hormesis. Hormesis really is challenge, any kind of challenge that makes something stronger. When we go to the gym, we lift weights, we really are breaking our muscles. When we go home and recuperate, that's when our body is building the muscle, repairing it in a heightened state of strength. Same with psychedelics. We break the old neural patterning, and then we go and integrate and recover and create new neural circuitry at a heightened and more agile level of perception. Same with foods, eating healthy foods. It's actually a lot of deep greens. The greens that we eat are really stressful on the being, and that forces the being to cultivate almost like a micro amount of natural chemo, as it were, and that fights any kind of unhealth or cell division in the body that's dividing too much. So any kind of hormesis, whether it's micro-hormesis in food or macro-hormesis on the stress level of the planet, this is a stressor that forces organisms to adapt, because biology that's under stress produces new genomic information. Under stress, any cells with genetic material intentionally start to misspell their genetic sequences in order to create a stress, like a dance, to force the rest of the organism to learn to adapt and become more agile and react in new ways. So they're creating challenge to which they must exist, to which they must adapt. And what they're doing essentially is seeking gain-of-function opportunities. So in medical terms, gain-of-function research is research that genetically alters an organism in a way that may enhance the biological functions of gene products. Now, naturally, we're doing this organically already by ourselves. The Earth is finding a whole way of reacting and responding differently to the stress it's under now. And when a whole system is under stress, it pushes for more adaptation, more biodiversity, so that we can survive the stresses. So much of the pressure for these big evolutionary leaps in life have been major stresses, which leaves me very curious about where we are now. Earth as an alchemist, this living, intelligent, amazing being, highly awake, highly aware, highly responsive. When we seed the soil in appropriate ways, and we communicate in appropriate ways and do ceremonies with intelligence, knowing that we're communicating with an intelligent being, far more intelligent than us, I feel that we can actually ask for certain elixirs to be produced in the earth layer. The soil is this amazing matrix. The earth is this most creative, beautiful, intelligent being. And as we plant things in the soil, they grow. Even if the soil is rejected and left neglected for a really long time, the smallest bit of opportune rainfall or environments that allow life to spring forth, it can seed forth from the matrix of the soil with no seeding necessary. The soil is this incredible living matrix. And I feel that there are these beautiful kingdoms of wisdom under the soil. They give rise, we see them reflected in indigenous patterns, in language, in song, in everything that we see reflected from indigenous cultures. I feel that comes to us from the soil. So we can receive this information from underworld communication. And in that way, I feel that Earth is an alchemist. And if we know to do the right ceremonies, we can invoke what's needed. So the ancient name for Egypt was Kem, and it means black because it refers to the soil, the black soil of the Nile, very rich with silt and with beautiful minerals all washed up from the Nile. And they did beautiful, very intentional, very immaculate ceremonies to bring forth the spilling of the Nile annually and to reap the medicine of these amazing minerals. So as I was saying earlier, the quality of the soil determines the quality of our intelligence. It's the culture of the planet. It's the immune system of the planet. So as we cultivate good soil, This is where we get our knowledge from. This is where we get our arts from. And the words chemistry and alchemy come from the word chem, which means black, because of the nature of rich soil where we get our intelligence. So if we do the right ceremonies with the soil, we can bring forth wisdom of the cosmos and communicate the earth voice into the cosmos. And as we propagate the soil, we propagate higher and higher levels of interdimensional intelligence. An amazing thing happens when a baby is breastfeeding. As the baby sucks and then releases, it sets up the suction. So as the spittle, the saliva of the baby, goes back into the breast just for a microsecond, the immune system of the mother reads that very quickly and exerts all the immune enzymes that are needed for the baby. It's this very beautiful and very quick call and response between mother and child. So I feel on the planet, on the surface of the planet, much the same is happening. We refer to the planet as our mother, and that's not because it's not a metaphor. It really is our mother. In the same way that a baby sucks and then releases what's needed, and then pulls the immune qualities and nutrition and minerals that's needed, and then releases more information of what else is needed, this octave of evolving nutrition is going on. The same way the earth is reading our saliva through our footprints, through our breath, through our words, through our bodies, it elicits a certain kind of response from the planet. And the earth is ingeniously adaptive. So in this way, as it's reading us with the same concept that would keep a seed under our tongue before planting a medicine, that's particularly for us, the earth is reading us and reading our needs now. It's producing medicines and maybe even producing preemptive medicines as we speak. Maybe the radical rate of neurodiversity, the different ways of seeing and thinking are part of the solution. There's this amazing adaptation going on the planet now that looks like disruption, it looks like stress, it looks like real interruption, but this is the nature of initiation. This is how we break and then remodel our consciousness going forward. This is the age-old technique of how Earth evolves. So seeing ourselves like this and understanding the world in this way, we start to really recognize that we are medicine. We are the necessary vessel in which medicine is activated. We start to see that it's not just the substance itself that is a medicine, but the method through which we take it and the vessel through which it activates. So all these adaptive capacities that we're expressing now, the psychedelic renaissance, neurodiversity, and all the biological challenges and ways that we see bodies adapting, these are really medicinal responses to a challenging situation. So as we recognize that we are a vital ingredient in this mix of illuminating consciousness, we recognize that we need to be prepared. If we are to be good medicine, then we need to be prepared. We need to be cleaned, we need to be toned, and we need to know that we are a vital ingredient in consciousness waking up to itself. I think a real big diagnosis of where we are on the planet is the self-forgetting. We've forgotten who we are, we've forgotten what our role is, we've forgotten the medicine that we bring, and we've forgotten the beauty. So as we start to really allow ourselves to receive the beauty of what it is to be human, this is going to be a vital part in our remembering and recognizing and being medicine. So we have within us this apothecary of potential, been sophisticated over timeless evolution. The responses our being is capable of are highly adaptive and intelligent. So remembering our allies and all the kingdoms that work with us and around us, and how they help us to open ourselves and receive the memory that they store for us, it's like a plug in a socket. And we have these interconnections that activate a whole new dimension as we have this mutual catalyzing. In this way, what we're doing here is really the process of awakening the stardust in our bones, in our bone marrow. It's really the process of recognizing that we are of the same stuff that we see in this miraculous alignment of the cosmos. We're made of the same stuff. So as we start to recognize this and recognize our beauty, we become the vessels that can then awaken our celestial memory, and we become the recognition itself of consciousness beyond what we thought possible. So I'm taking a really positive view on the stresses of the planet right now, because as I zoom out and I look through time, I see how biology and humans and beings have adapted through stresses over the ages. And I'm actually really curious about what happens, particularly when we allow ourselves to see the immaculate geometry of what it is to be human and the beauty of who we are, especially as we are awakening. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lila,
Yes.
for sharing your wisdom. We do have some time for questions before our next presentation, if anyone is curious and would like to ask a question out there.
So you talk about rituals. So how do we know the rituals, or do you teach the rituals?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of traditions that teach the rituals. And essentially, a successful ritual is really about intention. It doesn't have to be fancy. It can be really simple. One candle and your heartfelt prayer is a really powerful ritual, and that can be much more powerful than pomp and ceremony and a whole big thing. It's really about the power of your intention and that you mean your words. Having said that, we can be empowered to start building on really simple principles, like that we have a body, a heart, a mind, a soul, and a spirit, that we have 4 directions around us, 5 directions, because I count the center as a direction, that we have 5 elements around us, earth, fire, water, air, and ether, and just start playing with these, because the combination of these really simple ingredients is very, very potent. You want something new, you may do it at sunrise on the new moon facing east, for example. Take really simple ingredients and start empowering ourselves to activate our own rituals, because it really is in the frequency of our intention. And then we can start bringing this through. It's beautiful to learn age-old lineage rituals, but in the meantime, while you're getting there, empower yourself with the simple, beautiful knowledge of the ingredients that you know you already have access to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. So not so much a question, but at the very start you did a little ritual for us by doing a gratitude. I'm just wondering if you might do one to end.
Absolutely.
After everybody's finished their questions. I think that
For
would be
sure.
really nice.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that beautiful suggestion. What I'll do as a ritual for the benefit of all beings is focus on and take this beautiful quality of consciousness that we're cultivating here at this conference, and whatever you're feeling inside you that's been inspiring, and really lift that up into your awareness, what you feel has been inspiring. And then we take the nectar, this frequency that we feel of appreciation, of gratitude, of enlightenment, of opening, of gaining new knowledge, and we devote this to the highest well-being of all sentient beings. We let this fuse into the wider field of the cosmos and be like mulch for all beings. And at the same time, we recognize and allow that not only across this planet, but across the whole cosmos, there are multiple beings in prayer, in ceremony, in blessing, devoting their blessing and good intentions for us. So not only do we devote the quality and nectar of all that we cultivate to the wellness of all sentient beings, but we allow ourselves to be blessed and receive the well-meaning blessings of all beings across the cosmos. And then as we walk, we can just allow this to pulse into the earth and allow that feedback, that biofeedback, feel the pulse from the earth and allow that portal of communication to open. Thank you so much.